Hello and welcome to another YuGiOh video, and today I'm going to be taking you guys through my top cut Orcust Eldlich list that I took to the UK and Ireland / global extravaganza from the previous weekend. Had a lot of fun with this deck. The theory is basically I wanted to play Orcust for an event. I haven't played Orcust at an event in a long time. I didn't expect to do anything really with this deck, but there are a few tech cards in the main deck and the side deck that I thought would add a lot to the deck, which I just think are very, very impactful, and I wanted to discuss with you guys and some little bit of theory on some of the ratios, because I see there's quite a lot of debate in the community about some of the ratios as well, and hopefully my testing with this and my relative success with the deck is enough to convince you guys. So let's kick off with the Orcust engine. Very straightforward. 3 Gearsu, 1 Nightmare, 1 Wand, 1 Skeleton, and 3 Crescendo. You don't play Babel in this build. You're never going for an IP ding type play. It's not a very common thing to do in Orcust Eldlich at the moment, because you're really just trying to set up a negate and a recursion play for the following turn, because it's all about making sure your first turn is very impactful and having a grind game to follow it afterwards, which you don't necessarily get from the IP plays, especially when lots of people are playing Spell and Trap Destruction at the moment, which gets rid of Babel anyway. Lots of people play 2 Nightmare or 2 Skeleton or 2 Wand. Mostly it's 2 Nightmare. I'm not a fan of that, because the only way this deck can actually make Barricade Ball Blocker the first turn is if you summon a Gearsu and it resolves. But if Gearsu resolves, then you're going through the usual steps in order to make Galatea anyway, so you don't actually need an additional copy of Nightmare. And it's very rare that it comes up on the following turns anyway. Since Crescendo is already live, you're going to be grabbing a Gearsu, so you should be fine there. The 1 Symbol Skeleton is honestly one of the cards that I really debated cutting beforehand, but I'm glad I didn't, because it gives you the infinite grind game, which is something that's very, very important in the UK meta sometimes when you go up against particularly grindy decks. And 3 Crescendo, some people are playing 2. I prefer 3 because 1, I think most people are on 3 already, but the argument there is generally you're sending 1 off goods, and then that gives you a second 1 off Galatea, and then you're going to need your Galatea to become 2 negates, because 1 negate is generally not enough in this format. But the banishing is very important, still very impactful. The Eldlich lineup is pretty standard too. It's 2 Lord, 3 Land, 3 Scarlet Sanguine, 3 Conquistador, and 2 Wakero. Some people, or quite a few lists, play 3 Wakero at the moment, because you're playing goods in the main deck at 3 or at 2 in some lists. Sending one of this can be actually quite important instead of sending the Conquistador, hence people like to play 3. I just couldn't find a space in my list, and I felt very happy with it. I never felt like I was running out of stuff, generally because Orcust provided more of a grind game than the Eldlich lineup, and enough that I then still had like OTK potential periodically, and was able to just kill people with a big Lord and like a Dingirsu and stuff, so didn't really have any issues with the Eldlich lineup on the day. For consistency, 3 goods already mentioned. Goods is just absolutely insane. It gets your full Orcust engine, or it gets you that missing piece of interaction for your Eldlich engine. 3 Prosperity. Very, very good card. The fact that you can use this to dig for power cards, like some of the text that we'll see later in the video, is really, really cool. Especially because, you know, even if cards are limited, you essentially run a lot more copies of them because of the existence of Prosperity. Plus, it just gets you to like Gearsu and stuff, so it makes the deck a lot more consistent. So I really see this as an Orcust card first, and then a consistency card second. And then the next one is Reasoning, which adds a little bit extra consistency. Very cool, because we've only got 8 monsters in the main deck, so you're generally milling like 4 cards at least, and then hitting a monster. So unless you hit Gearsu and they call 4, you're generally in a really good spot, because if you hit the Golden Lord, it's massive, and if you hit anything else, then it's part of your Orcust combo. So I was very happy with Reasoning. It often milled good cards like the different Eldlich pieces, or it milled just like a Crescendo or something, so very, very happy with Reasoning. Highly recommend it if you're playing a smaller monster count like I am, but it does depend on your build, of course. Then the other pieces of interaction are all the disrupts. So obviously Called by the Grave. The deck has this like inherent fear of Lancia, which generally doesn't actually materialize into anything, because if you send a Crescendo, you can chain it as a response, and then you still get your Galatea or onto a Dingirsu live, and then you're in a pretty good spot in the following turn. So there's this myth that if people play Lancia on your turn, then you're in real trouble. But the good thing is you can't play Lancia on your opponent's turn, and that's when you do a lot of your banishing with. So I was very, very happy with the matchup into Lancia, but I want to call by the grave just for the occasional Ash, Vela, that kind of thing. And it's a pretty decent disrupt in a Prankids format as well. Then I did decide to main Spell and Trap removal, went with Twin Twisters. This was following discussions with Henry from the Orchestra group and John from my local group. Basically, it was between Twister and Cosmic Cyclone. I'm a huge fan of Cosmic in a deck like this, where you've got a lot of grind game and trading 1-for-1. But Twisters is basically that you need it for, it's very useful in the Prankids matchup where you're hitting 2 back rows, so you can guarantee hitting the fusion spell during the standby phase, so they can't actually use it. And it was just nice for the UK meta where you expect a lot of Shadol and stuff who was setting loads of back rows. So yeah, I was very happy with it. Once I discarded a Nightmare, apart from that I just discarded other pieces, and generally it performed very well, so I'd definitely recommend it in the future. I'm not playing any droplets in this list. Part of that is I don't like the value trade-off. I think you're putting too much value into just negating 1 or 2 effects. Beyond that, when you're trying to break the combo boards, you generally do it with board breakers rather than droplets, so I was pretty happy to just skip over that. And the other thing is, you know, it's money and availability. Then we're on to the Trap Disrupt. So Imperial Order was absolutely busted. You can dig this off Prosperity, I did that twice, and it's just a game winner, so absolutely worth running. Then 3 Torrential and 3 Strike, so these are like half of the board breakers that you end up playing post-siding. Very, very important for the occasional combo matchup. Generally, but Strike is just good against loads of matchups, which is weirdly applicable, so definitely worth running. The fact that it's a counter trap is huge. That's the 40 card main deck. Let's get on to the extra deck, and then we can do the side deck. So extra deck, I went with 2 Dingirsu, 2 Galatea, and 1 Longirsu, and I'm sure there's going to be somebody telling me that these ratios are wrong. Almost every Orcust Eldlich list you see will play 3 Galatea and 2 or 3 Dingirsu, and the argument I always hear from them in the video or in the comments or wherever it is you want to banish 1 off Prosperity. And my opinion is, if you're going to be banishing 1 off Prosperity all the time, just play a different card that is occasionally useful, and then banish that most of the time whenever you draw Prosperity. And that way, at least on those times when you haven't banished it, you get that extra piece of interaction. So that's how I'm going to always be working with it. I'm very happy with the 2 and 2. I was occasionally banishing 1 Dingirsu off the Prosperity, which was problematic once, so I think I'm going to try and avoid that in the future. But otherwise, very, very happy with it. For the infinite grind game, you only need 1 of this and 1 of this. And for the better grind game, you want 2 of this and 1 of this in action. And that includes being in the graveyard, so it's really not a problem if they're not in the extra deck anymore. And people will just fear the last Dingirsu, even if you don't actually have it, and just not wait for it sometimes, which is quite cool. Longirsu never ever came up. It came up a lot in testing, but never on the event. I'm a big fan of having it. That is one of the things that you banish off Prosperity a lot, so maybe it's kind of like one of those pieces of interaction that you don't necessarily need, and maybe it could be changed for something more impactful. Then for the rest of the links, we got 1 Linkaribo, Link Spider, Barricade Borg, Vampire Sucker, Nightmare Phoenix, and Unicorn. Unicorn never came up. Phoenix came up once because it was just the best thing to link into to OTK. Vampire Sucker came up once. A lot of people have been running this because you often end on Golden Lord and Trap. It's a nice little piece of interaction, but it's generally better in formats where Zoo is more popular, because then you summon the Zoo, get a battle with an Xyz monster, and then make a Zeus. Borg is necessary, Link Spider is necessary, Linkaribo is potentially cuttable actually, because you can just make Link Spider with the token, but every now and again this comes up and it's quite nice in the Dino matchup, which is really, really important for me because I play Dino round 2. But yeah, otherwise very happy with these. No Access Code Talker, no IP, that's because they've been replaced with Waking the Dragon targets, but potentially those would come in instead. And then the mandatory one is Zeus. You can occasionally just make this with a single Girsu, which is quite nice. I also played Pleiades because I wanted something good for when I have double trap. It's really sad when you have resolved double trap and then have nothing good to go into, so Pleiades was just super solid. I summoned it a couple of times. Maybe I'm just summoning double trap more than other people, or maybe people are letting me get away with summoning double trap more. But yeah, I was very happy with it. Then for the Waking Dragon targets, I played Ultimate Falcon and Extravaganza. I never summoned the Ulti Falcon, but I did summon the Extravaganza. I love Extravaganza because it means you're essentially playing 2 copies of Order after siding when people hit your Waking. But my issue with the event was people seemed to stop playing Lightning Storm, or maybe they couldn't afford it or something. So it was very rare that my back row was actually just wiped and removed. So I'm potentially considering just removing Waking for the UK meta, but very good online still. Lots of people online are playing Lightning Storm. So if you're on DB, or if you're playing, you know, remote duels with bigger fields, then I think definitely keep the exterior and maybe change the Ultimate Falcon for something else. The problem with Ultimate Falcon is 3500 is just not enough when people can make Boros Sword, or people can make Ulti Conductor and just attack into it. So maybe there's some alternative that's slightly better than Ulti Falcon to fill up that spot. Right, side deck. So we've got Triple Trap Trick, 2 Witch's Strike, 2 Waking the Dragon, and you should also play 2 Needle Sealing. I was convinced I had them, but it turns out I didn't, so 2 Skullmeisters here. All my testing was done with the assumption that I would have Needle Sealing. This gives you 5 Waking Dragons when you're going into game 2, if you think that your opponent is going to be playing Lightning Storm, which unfortunately for me was very rare. Witch's Strike is very, very good. So essentially these 5 are acting as additional board wipes. When people like make a board and then you attempt to torrential them and they negate it, then following that you just play Witch's Strike, and they lose everything, and it's very, very rare for people to have enough disrupts to actually be able to beat that. So the plan against combo is resolve, well, get access to torrential and one of these, or 2 torrential, or torrential the strike, or the one of these guys alongside it. There can be only one. I wasn't a huge fan of there can be only one in theory, but the fact that you can send this with Lord and then add the Lord back to hand and then you get to summon it because this is already gone, made it really, really nice, so definitely worth considering. And the final card was Shared Ride. I was just looking at my last slot and thinking I wanted to put something in, but I wasn't sure what. I was debating whether Droll was better than this, and it would certainly be better in situations where you're going to time, but it's not generally better overall because you're playing a deck that's very grindy, so getting access to resources makes this really, really good, especially in a format where you got Prankids and Shaddoll invoked. So that is the list itself. Just talking quickly about my matchups. So I played against, I think it was 3 or 4 Shaddoll invoked matchups on the day. I played against Dino, I played against Mech Knight, I played against, in the final round I played against Matt Price, who had the Code Talker list, which then ended up getting top 4. So that was one of my losses. The other loss was actually to Mech Knights in time. You just set so many cards, so it's a bit tricky in that one. But yeah, very, very happy with the list overall. All my wins ended up being 2-0s, including all my matches against Shaddoll invoked. So I was really surprised with that because I figured Eldlich has such a horrendous invoked matchup that I should be losing all the time. But for whatever reason, it panned out. I think it's a combination of the crescendos being super impactful and prosperity digging for things like Imperial Order, the exterior and the extra deck seemed really, really strong. So very happy with the list overall. Let me know your suggestions in the comment section down below. We'll see if I can bring Orcust Eldlich to the future matchups. Try to get us some more events in the future, or perhaps a different take on Orcust. I've seen some very cool stuff coming out of the Orchestra Duelist Facebook group, but always open to suggestions. Thanks very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.